What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Chief Zone podcast. Farzine Vasugian here with you. The Chief Zone back in your life. Did not have a show last night. Apologize for that. It's awesome. You guys asking where the Wednesday Chief Zone was. Pushed it back to today. And yes, we are back. We are live on May the 8th. And, you know, it is that time of year, of course, with the Kansas City Chiefs and the NFL in general, where there isn't a whole lot to talk about as far as breaking news goes or any of that stuff, but we still have some things to react to as Chiefs rookie minicamp wrapped up over the weekend and OTAs are underway. I'll tell you one name that you should be aware of with the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of undrafted free agents. A very interesting name the Chiefs brought in, and I'll talk to you guys about that. Patrick Mahomes' half-brother received a rookie minicamp invite. What's going to be next for him? I know a lot of people were reacting to that, and also some news around the NFL regarding the Dallas Cowboys and the Carolina Panthers that we should talk about here on the podcast. Appreciate all of you guys who are watching live on Facebook and YouTube. Just a reminder, we're not going to have a Red Friday live chat this Red Friday. We're going to hold off on the Red Friday live chats in the meantime until there's breaking news or until we get closer to training camp, because right now there isn't a whole lot to talk about. So I don't want to do a whole live stream when it is that downtime. It's usually right before the NFL draft. There's always that little period before that NFL draft. And then after the NFL draft where the OTAs get underway. So we are going to reach that point where we are going to kind of hit a little bit of a dull period here. And I will say we will do one more episode next week, and then we'll take the rest of the month off. Towards the end of the month, it is my birthday. And then, so it's weird this year. My birthday is right before Memorial Day weekend. So I'll definitely take a little bit of a break from the podcast during the second half of this month. So don't expect the Chiefs Zone podcast for a couple of weeks. We'll still do reels and whatnot, but no long form podcast, anything like that in the meantime here. Real quickly, before we move on, a couple of notes here. I do want to make a note of here. I got a chance to meet with Jackson and his father, Taka. Two great people. Jackson, of course, got highlighted. He went viral when Jey Uso gave him his sunglasses on WWE Raw, not this past Monday, but the Monday before when they were in Kansas City. And I had a chance to connect with Jackson and his father. Jey Uso was trying to reach out to them, and people were able to make it happen with the magic of the internet. The internet gets a bad rap for certain things out there, but this was one of those good moments with the internet there. So they were able to connect Jey Uso with Taka, Jackson's father, who is battling cancer. And I put a video out there. Jey Uso on his Instagram put a video out there. I do encourage you guys to check it out. It's really cool. One of those special moments between a kid and a fan, a kid who is a fan and a celebrity athlete, whatever you want to call him, a WWE superstar. And WWE really does a great job with these kinds of things. One last note here. My brother and I went to Arrowhead last week, had a private tour, and our tour guide is a red coder by the name of Lee Miller. And it was pretty cool. As soon as we got in, we met with Lee as we were checking in to get our tour started. Lee mentioned he listened to the podcast and he follows the page, the social media, all of that stuff. So, Lee, if you're listening, you know who you are. A big shout out to you and a big thanks for everything you do for the Kansas City Chiefs as a red coder. And big thanks to you and great of a tour guide. Showed us so many places there. We've done the tour many years ago, but that was like in a group setting where, you know, it's always kind of crazy and you're not able to get the pictures you want to get, especially when kids are running around. So we did the private tour this time, and there were also some things that we saw that we actually had not seen in the public tour before. Maybe that's part of the private tour. I'm not sure, but Lee was very kind enough to give us a great tour of Arrowhead Stadium last week. So a big thanks and a shout out to Lee for being super awesome and being a great tour guide for my brother and I last week at Arrowhead. All right. All of that out of the way, except I do want to let you know before we move any forward, This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. Obviously, right now we have the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs. Those have been a lot of fun to watch lately. Major League Baseball is in full swing. See what I did there? As a matter of fact, I have tickets this Saturday at the K, courtesy of SeatGeek. Especially when you're a Star Wars geek like me. You got to go to Star Wars Day at the K. So get your tickets from there. The NFL schedule is coming out next Wednesday. And shortly after that, you will be able to get your tickets to Chiefs games, any other NFL games. You guys can get your tickets at SeatGeek, and new customers can use my promo code FARZINE, and you will save $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, get your tickets there, and at checkout, use my promo code FARZINE for $20 off your first order from SeatGeek. All right, let's get right into things here. The Kansas City Chiefs had their rookie mini camp over the weekend, as did all the other NFL teams. Some teams have them different days. I think the Bengals were the only team that had rookie minicamp for just one day. Most teams have them for 2 to 3 days. The Chiefs had it for 3 days. And obviously, following the draft, there are a lot of undrafted free agents who get signed. And a very notable name that the Chiefs got in free agency following the draft was former Arizona State and Florida wide receiver Elijah Badger. He is now on Kansas City's roster, and I think this is a very interesting name, a name that I think a lot of people need to get familiar with and just kind of keep an eye on, because I think this is someone who could make a name for himself in OTAs and training camp, and then he'll obviously get those opportunities in the preseason games, which certainly will mean a lot, especially for a guy like Elijah Badger, someone who could maybe contribute on special teams as well for the Chiefs. When you look at his numbers here, just the stats alone are pretty impressive. In 2022 with ASU, 70 catches, 866 yards, 7 touchdowns that year. That's the most touchdowns he's had in a single season. In 2023, numbers went down a little bit, 65 catches, 713 yards, and 3 touchdowns. This past year with Florida, very interesting season for him, where he had 39 receptions, but had 806 yards. He averaged 20.7 yards per reception. That is the second most in college football last year, among any receiver that was in the top 100 in receiving yards. The most was by Omega Blake, the wide receiver for the Charlotte 49ers. Yes, the Charlotte 49ers from the AAC. So you think of a stat like that kind of average. I remember Eddie Kennison, who I don't think got a lot of the credit he really deserved during his time in Kansas City. Eddie Kennison had a significantly high yard per catch average. But Kansas City's offense didn't really allow him to explode or really go off the way he should have, because a lot of the focus was on Tony Gonzalez and the running game at the time. And obviously the NFL has changed so much since then. But Elijah Badger does kind of remind me of an Eddie Kennison type of football player. So, I'm kind of curious. And by the way, I'm trying to look real quickly. How many games did he play in his last year with Florida? He played a full season. So didn't have a lot of catches go his way, but he had some insane numbers in some games. Like, for instance, early on in the season, 3 catches, 123 yards. That was in week 2, or the second game of the year for Florida. Later on in the season against Kentucky, 3 catches, 148 yards, 6 for 131 against LSU. He had those kinds of numbers, 5 for 94 against Texas A&M. So those are the kinds of numbers that Elijah Badger was able to produce. And I think when you look at the receiver room in general here, and I would love to hear your guys' response. I see some of you guys commenting as we go on here. I like Kansas City's wide receiver room right now, and I felt the same way going into last season. Now, that was when the Chiefs had Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, and there was a lot of hype with those 3 guys going into the season. And then Hollywood Brown got hurt on the very first snap of the preseason. Rashee Rice got hurt early in the regular season. And with all the hype, it was crazy because Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice, they trained together quite a lot in Texas. And they drafted Xavier Worthy. And I remember every single day from the media, they would show those three guys, Worthy, Brown, and Rice, walking down together on that little hill that's going downward towards the practice fields over at the Griffins area, the practice facility. And then when Hollywood Brown got hurt, obviously he was not practicing, and then you just saw Worthy and Rice together, and it just looked different. Then my point is there was so much hype, especially with Patrick Mahomes and Hollywood Brown, the connection they built in OTAs and in training camp. And listen, I've said this many times. I don't go too crazy for highlights that happen in OTAs and training camp because that's just practice, man. I see this every year. I see this from Chiefs fans, and I see this from fans across the other 31 NFL teams. I mean, there are literally highlights being posted by the teams of them hitting pads or doing drills. Keep in mind, they're in shorts. They don't have pads. They just have a helmet on. And I see fans go, "Oh, they look good." Well, yeah, of course they look good. They're professional athletes. Like, let's settle down a bit here. And I'm not trying to be the party pooper or anything like that. I get it. You know, it is that time of year where we have football withdrawals and all of those things, but I just don't go crazy over practice highlights. What did Allen Iverson once say? We're talking about practice here. Nothing too big to go crazy over. But I will say this. Yeah, Jay, you speak my language. Go Knights, go. Game 1 pissed me off. They better get shit right tonight. Otherwise, I don't know. Hey, it could be worse. They could be the Celtics. Have you guys seen the Celtics these first the last two games in round 2? I mean, come on. But neither here nor there. My point is, when I look at the receiver room right now for Kansas City, you have Worthy, Brown, Rice. They're on the team. Juju Smith-Schuster's back on the team. I know he's not the same receiver he once was, but the Chiefs brought him back for a reason, and you saw it against the New Orleans Saints, and you saw it against the Buffalo Bills and the AFC Championship game. You have Jalen Royals, who's got a 40 speed that Andy Reid loves to utilize in this offense. Tyquan Thornton also has the speed that Andy Reid would like to utilize. You have Nico Remigio, who was pretty quiet all year long, up until the playoffs, where he had 2 significant returns. He had that big kick return to open up the divisional round against the Texans, and then had that big punt return against the Bills that set up a really quick touchdown drive. You also have Justin Ross. I guess, listen, as long as Justin Ross is still on the team, I guess the jury is still out on him. But my biggest concern with him is that with all the hype he's receiving, he was on the practice squad almost all of last year, and no team took him off Kansas City's hands. And then you have Elijah Badger. Now, one name I didn't mention on this list here is Sky Moore, who is entering the final year of his rookie deal. I think this is really the end of the tunnel for Sky Moore. I think this is kind of a point now where I think Sky Moore has maybe seen his final snap with the Chiefs. I know he ended his season on IR and did not play for the Chiefs again. I think he was practicing towards the end of the season, but did not end up coming back to the main roster at any point. But I'm just looking at the offense right now. Obviously, Worthy, Brown, Rice, and Smith-Schuster. I think those are your 4, and Jalen Royals. I think those are your 5 guaranteed spots. So that leaves you with 2 more. I think Nico Remigio is a guy they want to keep on special teams. And I think Elijah Badger is someone that they want to keep as their number 7 receiver. And I think Tyquan Thornton will be on the practice squad. He was previously, I believe, on New England's practice squad. And then you have Justin Ross, who was on Kansas City's practice squad last year. So maybe he goes back there. If not, could be Jason Brownlee. Or maybe someone else that comes up right before training camp gets underway. We'll see. But I'm liking Kansas City's receiving corps. It's definitely better now than, say, a year ago, certainly 2 years ago. And keep in mind, 2 years ago was the year where the Chiefs led the NFL in drops by a very wide margin. And how did that season end? Yeah, they still ended it by winning the Super Bowl. even with all the heartbreak endings with Kadarius Toney in week one, with all of those drops or balls going off his hands for an interception, Marquez Valdez-Scantling dropping a significant pass on Monday Night Football against the Eagles. I mean, you had a lot of those all year long, not a drop per se, but the game against Buffalo where Toney was offside, and that epic play where Travis Kelce had that crazy lateral. That play right there. I mean, the types of games Kansas City had go down to the wire, and they just gave games away. It's funny. People were complaining about Kansas City winning these close one possession games last year. Well, the year before, Kansas City had lost these types of football games with their own error. But it's only an issue when the opposing team makes an error against the Chiefs. Funny how that works. I just had to get that off my chest because I was thinking about that earlier today. But I really do like Kansas City's wide receiver room right now. Do you guys feel the same way? Shout out to your sister, Mickey. Happy birthday to her. And appreciate her for listening to the podcast. Joshua says, try being a Blues fan for 1.5 seconds. Oh, dude. That was brutal. Listen, I did not have a dog in that fight. But damn, that went to double overtime. Almost went to triple overtime. I was glad it did not go to triple overtime because that was a Sunday night and it was getting late. But I like the wide receiver room right now. And I really do think that this does spell the end for Sky Moore. Listen, Sky Moore is a great athlete. He's got a great skill set. The problem is he can't catch the damn ball. If you can't catch the ball, because what was the scouting report on Sky Moore? It's that he's got good speed. He can make defenders miss when he has the ball in his hands. When he has the ball in his hands, I guess you should change the word when to if, because Sky Moore unfortunately drops a lot of passes. That's why the Chiefs had that big revamp with the receivers last year. And unfortunately, there were so many injuries to the point where the Chiefs went and got DeAndre Hopkins midseason. So I think the wide receiver room looks really good. The running back room, I don't think there's a clear-cut number one running back unless Isaiah Pacheco returns to his 2022 or 2023 form. But you have Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. Now, obviously, we know what Kareem Hunt did. Statistically, far from flashy, but eye test-wise, if you watch the actual games, you saw Kareem Hunt did a lot of things that really gave this Chiefs team a big boost coming back to the offense. You have Elijah Mitchell from the 49ers. You got three veterans there who are all entering the final year of their deals. Some of them just on a one-year deal. You have Rashard Smith, who you drafted in the 7th round here, and he was one of the best running backs entering the draft in terms of 40 time. I think he had the third best 40 time among running backs in the NFL draft. So you've got some good depth at the running back position here. Tight end room, Travis Kelce. Listen, I think Travis Kelce is going to take a step forward this year statistically. And the reason I say that, I think you'll get all your receivers healthy this time with Worthy, Brown, Rice, Royal, Smith, Schuster. I mean, that's a really good receiving room right there. And then you have Noah Gray, who had that big growth in 2024. Then you have Jared Wiley, who I know the Chiefs really like. His season unfortunately ended on IR, but I know the Chiefs really like him, and they want to give him an opportunity in 2025 to showcase what he can do. And who knows who that fourth tight end, who that's going to be, whether it's on the main roster or they're going to have a tight end on the practice squad, whether it's Tanyan, Brittingstool, Watson. I mean, that remains to be seen right now. It looks like they let go of, what was his name? Baylor Cup, I believe. Yeah, they let him go recently. Now, let's look at the offensive line, because that's where the big question mark is right now for Kansas City. You have Juwan Taylor, who's up and down with his blocking. Some games he'll have a good game pass blocking. Some games he'll look like the worst right tackle in the NFL. Trey Smith, I don't need to go over Trey Smith. I don't need to go over Creed Humphrey. Those guys are studs and the best at their positions at right guard and center. The left side is where we have some questions here. Let's start with Jalen Moore. And I know the Chiefs really like Jalen Moore because of what he was able to do in San Francisco when he filled in for Trent Williams there. And Brett Veach said the only knock on Jalen Moore is he didn't get to play much because he was a backup. But when he did play, everyone liked what they saw from him. Josh Simmons is someone that the Chiefs feel pretty good about. I know there were some concerns out there about his injury and his availability, though I think I saw from ESPN this morning that the injury wasn't as big of a concern. Maybe character-wise, that'd be a bigger concern. And I think with Andy Reid, we know the story with Andy Reid and what he's been able to do with some players and some character concerns there. I mean, for crying out loud, they gave Kareem Hunt a second chance, and I think Kareem Hunt has certainly showed that he's making the most of his opportunity, his second chance with the Chiefs, and the Chiefs know what they're doing with these kinds of situations, especially when you're led by Andy Reid, Brett Veach, Clark Hunt. I think the Chiefs did their due diligence on that one there. And there's always a possibility that they could shift Josh Simmons to right tackle. That's not preferred. But if Jawan Taylor is just so bad, I suppose Josh Simmons is a better option there. Simmons is a way better left tackle than he is a right tackle. But again, if you're comfortable with Jalen Moore at left, and I'll say this, maybe Jalen Moore is the guy who shifts from left to right at some point this season. I don't know. I do think that for Patrick Mahomes, it is more suitable and easier to work with if you have a struggling right tackle as opposed to a struggling left tackle. You know, for obvious reasons, a lot of quarterbacks are right-handed. The left tackle spot for 99% of quarterbacks, that's the blindside spot there. But here's the big one. And I saw this on ESPN. ESPN put together a really nice list of all 32 teams and one position that they all still need to upgrade in, even following the draft. And for Kansas City, it's a very obvious one. It is the left guard spot. You have Kingsley Suamataia at left guard. And I think we need to have a conversation about this right now. What is the average? What is the prototypical offensive guard in the NFL? What would you guys say? I think it's fair to say 6'3", 300 pounds, somewhere around there. That's the prototypical height and weight, size-wise, for an NFL offensive guard. And so it got me thinking, what are some of the left guards the Chiefs have had in recent memory? Maybe not all of them are going to be recent memory. Some of them may be a little a decade or two old here, and I'll give you that list right now. So Kingsley Suamataia, he's 6'5", 326 pounds. Remember that number, 6'5", 326. That's Kingsley Suamataia. What was Joe Thuney's height and weight? 6'5", 304. Same height, but he's about 22 pounds lighter than Kingsley Suamataia. Trey Smith, 6'6", 322. Very close in weight to Kingsley, 4 pounds lighter, 1 inch taller. Now, Trey Smith is a right guard, mind you, but I think the story still fits here. Now, let's go back in Chiefs history. And yeah, I was looking at some left guards over the years. If you go to Pro Football Reference and look up their historical starting lineups, you can check out some of the starters that they've had over the years. Joe Thuney's been starting for the Chiefs since 2021. And then in 2020, who was it? Nick Allegretti was a starting left guard. Before that, it was Andrew Wiley, who eventually shifted to right tackle. Then you had Cam Irving. I mean, the Chiefs have gone through a roller coaster, like a convention of left guards over the years in the Patrick Mahomes era. They had Cam Irving. They had Brian Witzman, Zach Fulton, who actually was not bad considering he was almost undrafted. By the way, in 2015, now, mind you, I've been blogging about the Chiefs. I've been podcasting about the Chiefs for a very long time. So I'd like to think I could recall all of the starting lineups from over the years of my time of watching Chiefs football closely, including the years that I've been podcasting about them and a couple of years before that. I do not recall this guy's name. Kansas City's starting left guard in 2015, according to Pro Football Reference, was Ben Grubbs. I had to Google Ben Grubbs. I do not recall this name whatsoever. And again, I'm someone who podcasts about this team, and I'd like to think, you know, I can recall a lot of these things fairly easily, but I have zero recollection of Ben Grubbs. Zero. But he played for the Chiefs in 2015, two-time Pro Bowler, not with the Chiefs, but with the Baltimore Ravens. Played for the Saints for a couple of years and then made his way to Kansas City for one last season, and that is where he rode off into the sunset. I do not recall Ben Grubbs for the life of me. Do any of you guys? Steven's asking, could Smith go to left guard? he could. Here's my thing. When you're thriving at the position you're playing at, I would prefer he just stays at right guard because he's already doing a great job there. Now, could we see a shift? Sure. I mean, never say never, because we saw that last year. I did not think it was going to happen. A lot of you guys did. I did not think the Chiefs were even considering moving Tooney out to left tackle, and they did it during the game. That was against the Raiders, that Black Friday game. But let's look some more. I mentioned Joe Tooney, 6'5", 304, same height, 22 pounds lighter than Kingsley Suamataia. Trey Smith, 1 inch taller, 4 pounds lighter. What about a guy like Jeff Allen? I know I'm going back a few years. Jeff Allen was a starting left guard for Kansas City for a couple of years. He was 6'4", 306, 1 inch shorter, 20 pounds lighter. What about Ryan Lilja, a guy who was absolutely one of the best left guards in the game for the Colts and for the Chiefs? Now, I also recognize I am going back several years at this point, but Ryan Lilja was 6'2", 291. Brian Waters, everyone knows about Brian Waters during his time in Kansas City, won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award one season, and just dominated at left guard. He was kind of overshadowed by Willie Rowe, Will Shields during the early the Dick Vermeil run, the early 2000s. But eventually, once those guys retired, a lot of people took notice of Brian Waters. But Brian Waters, he was 6'3", 320, so 2 inches shorter than Kingsley Suamataia and 6 pounds lighter. And that's a guy who had a very successful career at left guard for Kansas City. So I just gave you some examples of former left guards for Kansas City over the past, 2 decades here. Kingsley Suamataia has the size to play left guard. Perhaps he was too slow to play left tackle in the NFL. Is it someone who could maybe take that skill set, shift it over to left guard and play well? Because Brett Veach says he liked what he saw from Kingsley Suamataia at left guard last year in that Week 18 game against Denver. Is that an area where Kansas City can improve? And when I say improve, and to be clear, I'm talking about how the season ended. Obviously, no one, you're not going to get anyone better than Joe Tooney at left tackle, or left guard, excuse me. But Tooney shifted over to left tackle, and you were left with Mike Caliendo at left guard. Now, I thought Mike Caliendo did fine at left guard in the regular season, but once the playoffs got underway, Tooney took a step back at left tackle. Caliendo, I thought, took a big step back at left guard. I mean, it was just a disaster at left guard for Mike Caliendo. That's why they're giving some competition here and giving Kingsley, a guy who they traded up. I know it was just one spot, but they still traded up to get him in last year's second round of the NFL draft, because you don't want to punt and give up on your second round pick that fast. I know the Chiefs have given up on one player within the first that they drafted within the first 2 days during their rookie season, and that was Kavari Russell, which is crazy because the late Therese Paylor, which, by the way, classy move by the Chiefs. They I should say they already have they have a plaque in the media press box of Therese Paylor honoring him. His seat where he normally sat in the press box is retired. No other media member is allowed there, which I think is very classy of them to be able to honor Therese Paylor that way. And I don't know where I was going with this. Oh, yeah. Therese Paylor, at the time, he wrote an article about Kavari Russell and his growth and the progress he's making as a cornerback. And then a week later, the Chiefs released him. And everyone was so confused. Like, wait a minute, we just read an article about this guy and his growth in Andy Reid's system on defense. Well, the Chiefs made the right move because Kavari Russell has turned into an NFL journeyman, unfortunately. My point is, there's a reason why the Chiefs are not giving up on Kingsley Suamataia yet. Yeah, he was a terrible left tackle. No one's debating this. Maybe he could find a home for himself at left guard. Maybe that is what he's suited to do. Joshua says Andy Heck needs to be fired if this O-line doesn't play better this year. It's been 6 years since Fisher. Here's the thing. First of all, I disagree. I don't know if Andy Heck needs to be fired. I mean, he had the best interior offensive line, and I think Andy Heck deserves a lot of credit for that. Sure, you could also say Andy Heck, in addition to having the best interior offensive line, he's had the worst offensive tackles the past couple of years. How much of that is really on him? How much of that is on Brett Veach and the scouts not being able to bring in the right set of tackles? I mean, I don't know. I mean, listen, they had Orlando Brown in Kansas City, and I remember a lot of people thinking, oh, the Chiefs are going to regret letting him go. Well, he's done terrible for the Bengals also. His first year with the Bengals, he led the NFL in pressures allowed. So that tells you what you need to know. Kansas City knows what they're doing when it comes to personnel, who they keep, who they're not going to keep. I just feel like, and I haven't felt this way until this week, I just feel like Kingsley Suamataia, size-wise, has more things to offer at left guard than left tackle. So I'm hoping this is the year that the Chiefs have a good left guard, a good left tackle, and they'll have a solid offensive line. Because I'm looking across the board on offense and defense. We already went over the offense in great detail on this podcast. We'll see what happens with Carson Steele. I know he's listed as a fullback. Is he someone who they keep, or do they have too many running backs? We'll see. But I'm looking at the defense, and I told you guys this on last week's podcast, how excited I am about their defensive line with who they drafted: Omar Norman Lott, Ashton Gelati. Those are two really good defensive linemen. They're at, especially Omar Norman Lott. That is one player I've had my eye on for quite some time. And if you've been following my mock drafts leading up to the draft, you guys would have noticed I had Omar Norman Lott coming to Kansas City in the second round, and that's exactly what happened. I'm excited to see Omar Norman Lott play next to Chris Jones. I'm excited to see Ashton Gelati be part of this defensive end rotation with George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Charles Omenihu. I know FAU maybe just has not lived up to the hype for a first-round draft pick, but he's had some flashes here and there. They signed Jerry Tillery to play defensive tackle. They have Mike Pennell, who I'm really glad they re-signed. I think he's been a great addition for this defense. I remember when they had him in 2019 to help make that push to Super Bowl 54, and they brought him back a couple of years later. So I'm glad Mike Pennell's on the team still. I like this defensive line, and they still have the same linebackers. They got Nick Bolton on a nice deal, a 3-year deal. They have Leo Chenal, who's still on a rookie deal. They have Drew Tranquil. So your front seven, I think, looks merely the same. Omar Norman Lott is replacing Treshaun Wharton, which I think is a big loss. But I think if you're going to replace him with anyone, I think Omar Norman Lott's the right guy to have next to Chris Jones. Trust me, those two together, they're going to thrive. Interior offensive linemen, they will hate blocking those guys. Omar Norman Lott had the highest pass rush win rate among defensive tackles in college football last year. Ashton Gelati had the 6th most pressures among defensive ends last year in football, college football, that is. So I'm excited to see how they're going to contribute to this defense. Nick Bolton, we know how great of a run-stopping linebacker he is, and just how great this Chiefs defense was. They did not allow one single running back to rush for 100 yards. The only 100-yard rusher was Lamar Jackson, who's a quarterback. Jokingly, people refer to him as a running back. Yeah, I know. And then you look at the secondary. I have my concerns about the secondary. Trent McDuffie, more times than not, always wins that battle there. Jaden Hicks, I'm excited to see what Jaden Hicks is going to do going from year 1 to year 2. Brian Cook, I think, is a very solid safety who the Chiefs drafted in the second round of the 22 draft. That was a great draft for Kansas City. Christian Fulton coming in from the Chargers. He's had some good moments. Jamari Connor, I think, is an underappreciated defensive back for Kansas City. I know he's kind of shifted around with safety and nickel cornerback for Kansas City. They drafted Noah Williams, who led all college football players in interceptions last year. Mike Edwards is back on the team. I mean, I really do like Kansas City's defense, their secondary. I think they are missing that big playmaker guy, statistically speaking, like a Honey Badger when he was, 3rd in interceptions a couple of several years ago. I think it was 2021 or 2020. I like what I'm seeing from this defense. The only big glaring hole is left guard. Can Kingsley Suamataia, with his size, prove that he's a better guard than tackle in the NFL? That, I think, is the biggest question when you look at roster personnel here with the starting lineup. Because I like Kansas City's roster right now. The depth is great. I told you guys this. A year ago. The Chiefs had to three-peat, which unfortunately they didn't. But I said they had to do it because there was going to be a lot of turnover with the roster. I speculated that guys like Justin Reed and Treshaun Ward were probably going to play their last season with the Chiefs. The Chiefs also had to figure out what they were going to do with guys like Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Harrison Butker, because all three of those guys last year was the final year of their contract. Now they got Creed Humphrey right before the regular season. They got who else did they get? They got Butker during training camp. I mean, they've been able to figure out how to keep a lot of these guys. Nick Bolton was another guy I was really concerned about, not just last year, but even this offseason. They found a way to keep him, which I was pleasantly surprised about. They found a way to keep. They got Chris Jones last year to a new deal, and they got Nick Bolton to a new deal this year. That's the type of job Brett Veach has done. I mean, bravo, Brett Veach. It hasn't been easy. Listen, we have learned in Kansas City, and I think Kansas City fans know this better than any other fan base. You know you cannot keep everyone. Tyreek Hill is an example of that. L'Jarius Sneed is another example of that. Joe Thuney is the latest example of that. 2 years in a row, the Chiefs have had to trade away a great player. Last year it was Sneed, and this year it was Thuney. I know Sneed did not live up to expectations, not even close to it with Tennessee, but in general, it's just, you look at this Chiefs team right now, they're still finding ways to win. I remember they were supposed to suck offensively without Tyreek Hill. They've gone to the Super Bowl all 3 years without Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins, they have not even won a playoff game together. In fact, I did not notice this until I listened to Tyreek Hill when he had that really weird exit interview after they lost to the Jets. That was Tyreek Hill's first time missing the playoffs in his entire career. So I think we all know who's won that trade. I mean, it was already determined well before then, but you all know who won that trade. My point is, Kansas City has found a way to move on. Listen, you got to live and die by the decisions you make. Kansas City traded Tyreek Hill away. They lived and died by that decision, and that's worked out really well. The same goes for L'Jarius Sneed and now Joe Thuney. I will say, I think Joe Thuney is the most significant loss of the three. I know most people will say Tyreek Hill, but I don't know. I'm just looking at this roster right now. I'm pretty excited about the way this roster is looking. Because I wasn't sure if Kansas City was going to be a contender. I know with the Vegas odds, they're behind the Ravens and the Bills. People are acting like the Ravens and the Bills, like they're 1 and 2, and there's a big gap between second and third in the AFC. I mean, it's not that far apart. Listen, if you're outraged by it, fine. But if you're a bettor like I am, I mean, put some money on that. That's a good thing, right? Money wise, because here's the thing. Every year we hear how the Bills are the most talented offense in the NFL and the most talented team in general in the NFL. And then you have a team like the Bengals who, let's give them some kudos here because they thrived last year. I mean, they statistically dominated, had the most passing touchdowns and yards of any quarterback last year. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase had the triple crown as a receiver, and Trey Hendrickson led the NFL in sacks. They didn't even make the playoffs. So you see all of these teams, and then you have Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. It's like, yeah, sure, Lamar's done a lot of great things, and I think he certainly played longer than a lot of people have anticipated, certainly has exceeded my expectations and has proven me wrong. But I'll say this right now. Are the Ravens a postseason threat? I mean, what's Lamar's record? 3-6? What's Buffalo's record against the Chiefs in the Mahomes-Allen rivalry? 0-4? And listen, Allen and Mahomes head-to-head already have the second most meetings of all time in postseason history. So at the rate they're going, eventually Allen's going to get a couple on Mahomes, of course. Tom Brady He won a lot of battles, but he lost a couple of those head-to-head matchups against Peyton Manning's over the years. So it's going to happen. But my point is this. Until another team does it, Kansas City is the team to beat in the AFC. Well, what did Jamar Chase say? Where are the team to beat in the AFC? Referring to the Bengals, which did not age well, not one bit. But Kansas City truly is the team to beat. Even in 2023, which I'm going to go back to again, that was the year where the Chiefs were vulnerable. That was the year where the Chiefs were supposed to be one and done in the playoffs. Oh, they beat the Dolphins because the Dolphins aren't used to cold weather. Okay, well, they're going on the road. Mahomes definitely going to lose this time. Nope. Beat the Bills. Oh, well, the Ravens, this is the best they've looked with Lamar Jackson. Their Chiefs definitely going to get stopped in their tracks. Nope, not that either. Chiefs found a way to win that one on the road also. So even in that year where the Chiefs were, I guess statistically, that was Kansas City's worst year in the Mahomes era, that ended in a Super Bowl win. And I think Kansas City, personnel-wise, they just look way better. I think personnel-wise, this is the best they've looked. I think that this might be, I don't want to say the best draft because 2022 is so hard to beat. But man, I'm really excited about this draft class coming in here. I think this draft class is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I really am. David says Veach and Reed had a great draft and offseason signing. This is going to be a good year again, and we have a lot of depth. David also says, I'm so sick of everyone always trying to make the Chargers something they aren't. What are the Chargers like? See, the Chiefs have won the AFC West 9 years in a row. I think the Chargers have won the AFC West 9 off seasons in a row. Like there has to be like a little joke that can be turned into a meme there about the success the Chargers have had in the off season, because that's where games are won, right? The off season, yeah, sure. But I mean, listen, perception is always going to be perception. People are going to have their prediction. I remember when the Patriots were running the NFL for 18 years, when Brady was there, the popular prediction was to say that the Patriots were going to have their decline. And some people are doing that with the Chiefs, and that's okay. People want to see the dynasty fall. I get that. I want to say, listen, I don't know where all of you guys watching, where your college allegiance stands. I'm a KU guy. I know some of you guys like that. Some of you guys hate that. As a KU fan, now, regardless whether you love or hate KU, you're familiar enough with KU to know that in basketball, when they win, you're sick of it because they win a lot. When they lose, there's a reason why on the road, when KU loses, there's a reason why fans storm the court. Beating KU is your national championship. And listen, I'm not shaming that. You're supposed to enjoy that. KU is a powerhouse program in college basketball. Now, this past year, obviously, was not very good for them, but you get my point here. In general, KU has just always been a powerhouse program. The Chiefs are now a powerhouse team in the NFL. So in the very few times when the Chiefs lose a football game, which again isn't often, but in the rare event when they lose a football game, everyone celebrates. All of the 31 other fan bases, they get together for a virtual parade on Twitter. That's the Chiefs right now. I take it as flattery, man, because I remember those days when the Chiefs pulled off upsets. The Chiefs don't pull off upsets anymore. I guess the only upset they pulled off was that anytime they come from behind in these games, like the 24-0 game against Houston, the Super Bowls where they've trailed by 10. I'm thinking all of them except for the Tampa game. I mean, they trailed in the Tampa game, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was ever 10 points. Mahomes, the first time he ever lost a game trailing by exactly 10 was this past Super Bowl, unfortunately. But my point is this. The Chiefs are now that team. But the Chiefs keep finding a way to improve their roster and stay competitive. Yeah, Joshua has a good point here. 11-0 in one-score games last year. And everyone kept saying, oh, eventually Kansas City's luck is going to come to an end, which I said this earlier in the podcast, and I guess it's worth repeating now. Wait a minute. I remember in 2023 when Kansas City shot themselves in the foot by dropping passes and being offside on offense, by the way. But when Kansas City found a way to win one-score games, that's when people would call them lucky. Listen, man, there's nothing wrong with being lucky. I remember the days when Kansas City was unlucky. Those days sucked. But by the way, did you guys see that Royals-White Sox game a couple of nights ago where the infielder, and I know this turned into a meme and a gif, where the ball hits his head and it just rolls away from his body, and he's just, for a half second, he's doing the whole, like, where the hell's the ball? And he turns around, he finally sees it, and then Bobby Witt Jr. with the bases loaded, the outfielder, which I can understand the strategy, but the outfielder was too far away from the outfield wall to the point where Bobby Witt Jr., he hits that ball, and the outfielder, even if the outfielder made that catch, he's not able to throw the runner at third base out. He would have been able to jog to home plate. But my point is, the Royals, did they not have some luck on their side with the gaffes and mishaps the White Sox had? Yeah. That's sports, man. That's what you're supposed to do. Whenever a team shoots themselves in the foot, you have to capitalize on that. Kansas City did that last year. It's not their fault. The Raiders decided to choke and not pay attention on the snap of the final play of the game, or second to last play, whatever it was. You can't ever apologize for winning close games. What's that saying? Football is a game of inches. And you certainly saw that with Kansas City last year. So I'm just looking at this Kansas City roster. I feel pretty good about it. I really do. I have high expectations from this Chiefs team. I was a little nervous that the division streak would come to an end. And I think the Broncos are going to be a much more improved football team. I have questions about the Chargers, but I do think at the end of the day, the Chargers will still be a very competitive football team. But I still think the Chiefs are the team to beat in the AFC West and in the AFC and in the NFL. Yeah, sure, the Eagles are the reigning champs here. But I still think the team, at the end of the day, it's the Chiefs until proven otherwise. Real quick note here. I forgot to mention this, talking about rookie minicamp here. Graham Walker, tight end from, I believe, Rice, was invited to Kansas City's rookie minicamp. He is the half-brother of Patrick Mahomes from his father's side of the family. He unfortunately did not stick around with Kansas City's roster. From the reports I have read, Graham Walker is expected to receive an invite to Jacksonville's 90-man roster spot. So we'll see. Listen, this is the unfortunate part of rookie minicamp and training camp. In rookie minicamp, some of these guys, they get a chance. This might be their last chance because there's not going to be enough room to join a 90-man roster. And the same thing with training camp. I know that gets highlighted more than rookie minicamp. But hey, the Chiefs gave him an opportunity. He gave it a try, I'm sure. It sounds like he'll still have a chance to make it on an NFL roster with Jacksonville. That is the report that's out there in the media. So there is that. Steven says, I suppose have some faith that we got someone in-house. If it's Kingsley or Caliendo or more, we can rely on at the other guard spot if we keep Taylor at right tackle. Oh, yeah. Are you guys talking to if there's an injury to Trey Smith? Yeah, I mean, I suppose you would have to do some shifting around there. Though I will say, I think Hunter Norzad, he looked really good pass blocking wise in that Week 18 game against Denver. His snaps as a center, not looking good. Definitely needs some work there, but I like what he can do as a pass blocker. And that was against a Denver team that led the NFL in sacks, and they were fighting to make the playoffs. So it's not like Denver was playing their backups in that game. Denver had something to play for in that game. So we'll see what happens there. A couple notes before I sign off for tonight. NFL news. The big news this week, George Pickens has been traded to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for a third-round pick, some other swaps that took place within that trade. So Dallas has Dak Prescott at quarterback, their $60 million quarterback, and they have CeeDee Lamb, who they've paid. They're going to pay Micah Parsons eventually, but opposite of CeeDee Lamb, you have George Pickens. You also have Jalen Tolbert. I'll tell you right now, on paper, that looks great. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert. That looks great. Now, Well, what did we just say with the Chargers? They won the AFC West 9 off seasons in a row. The Dallas Cowboys are another team, man. It's like that's another team that I'll believe it when I see it. And I'll say this: 2 years ago, when the Cowboys looked really hot going into the playoffs, I said, I believe it. I think the Cowboys are going to make a deep run. I said that about the Cowboys a couple of years ago. And what happens? They ran into the Green Bay Packers. Wow, they got humiliated in that one. I mean, they found a way to make it somewhat competitive and make it look somewhat close, but it was too little too late because what was it, like a 24-0 or a 28-0 lead for the Packers in that game? Everyone was just so confused. Like, how did the Cowboys go from the season they had to that in the playoffs? Just a bad look. Joshua beat me to this. But another story I wanted to get into, Justin Tucker released by the Baltimore Ravens. I love the press release that the Ravens put out there. And I mean, Justin Tucker, a lot of people consider him the best kicker in NFL history. I'm sorry, I can't read this without laughing. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically he's saying this was a very difficult decision and they made a football choice to move on from Justin Tucker. Really? A football choice? Oh, come on. Listen, you guys know me. I hate it when people in sports, whether it's a general manager, a coach, a player, when they lie, when they're like, oh, I don't do it for the money. This is not about the money. This was a football decision here, folks. Sure it was. Sure it was. Sure. This is kind of a sad story here. I've been very excited to see what this player was going to do in the NFL. I don't know if this player is going to have much of a career, though, but Panthers running back Jonathan Brooks is out for the year. I believe this is the first player to have suffered a season-ending injury for the 2025 season. Unfortunately, we see this from time to time where somebody suffers a season-ending injury at this time in the offseason. And unfortunately for Jonathan Brooks, this happened in the second week of May. Suffered a torn ACL, his second torn ACL in as many years. I think he had one, or maybe second in 3 years. Because didn't he have one in his final season with Texas? And that's what prevented him from starting the first couple of months for the Panthers. And he made his NFL debut against the Chiefs last year, actually, in November. And unfortunately, Jonathan Brooks, he's going to end up missing more games because of this torn ACL. This is the unfortunate part of sports. And I've said this many, many times, and I'll continue to say it. Injuries are part of sports in a very unforgiving way. I know a lot of people, fans, will say, oh, well, this team only won because this great player was injured. He wasn't available, man. I mean, I know a lot of Bills fans like to think Keon Coleman is the better receiver than Xavier Worthy. And that comparison is made because the Bills and the Chiefs traded in last year's draft. The Bills allowed the Chiefs to get Worthy. Well, first of all, I saw Keon Coleman. He hardly did anything in the playoffs. I think he had just one catch in all three of the playoff games that Buffalo played in. Second of all, I know some people have defended the comparison from Bills fans by saying that, oh, well, he was injured for a few games. Okay, so you're telling me he was unavailable, because availability is the best ability. I truly think this is an underrated aspect of sports. I think fans just want to play this hypothetical of, oh, well, if this player was available and that player was available. Well, man, that's not. Listen, I know we went over the roster here and I kind of forgot to mention this, and I'll say it again now. There's going to be an injury or two going into the regular season, unfortunately, because that is the reality of this game. And unfortunately for Jonathan Brooks, this is a guy with a lot of talent. I don't know if this guy's going to have much of an NFL career. I don't know if he's going to be able to prove the things that he can do in the league, because he's now suffered a second ACL tear in a very short amount of time. This is an unfortunate part, but that is part of sports. So we'll see what the Panthers try to do with the running back position moving forward there, and if they try to replace him before the season gets underway. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Chief Zone podcast. Quick note for next Wednesday's podcast, there won't be a Red Friday live chat for those of you coming in late. We're going to hold off on the Red Friday live chats until there's breaking news. Otherwise, we'll start doing them again when we get closer and closer to the NFL season, closer to training camp. Yeah, that's when we'll start doing that. So next Wednesday, that'll be the last podcast of the month. I'm going to take some time off like I usually do in the second half of May because it's my birthday and that's also Memorial Day. That's really the downtime for the podcast and NFL news in general. So I'm going to take some time out. We'll still have content. Don't worry. We'll still have reels. We'll have that stuff, but there won't be any live streams or podcasts unless there's like major breaking news involving the NFL or the Kansas City Chiefs. I will say this for our last podcast before we go on vacation here, which is going to be next Wednesday, we will react to the NFL schedule. The Chiefs schedule will be released Wednesday night. I'll say this. I did this last year. I actually intentionally, I did not look at the Chiefs schedule. I waited for the schedule to come out. I started the podcast live. I reacted to the Chiefs schedule on the podcast. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. The schedule is going to come out 7 o'clock Central Time, shortly after 7 p.m. That is when we will do the podcast, and I will give you my true, honest reaction live on the podcast. It was a lot of fun to do last year that way. And I want to do it that way again this year because the reaction is more fun that way. So we're going to do that on next Wednesday's podcast. And then the podcast is going to go on hiatus, go on a little vacation, to start off the summer season here. All right. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for joining me tonight on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Again, a reminder, join me next Wednesday, 7:15 Central Time. We will do the Chiefs Zone podcast reacting to the Chiefs 2025 NFL schedule. Until then, you guys take care, be well, be safe. Have a great weekend. Talk to you all next week.